Right. Welcome all to this Subject Overview and Scrutiny 2 meeting, which is being convened as a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed subsequently. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing it either from the Council Chambers, Civic Office, Angel Street, Bridgend, or from remote locations. Should I, as the Chair, experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, Councillor Amanda Williams will step in and take over temporarily as the Chair in my absence. And in her absence, Councillor Ross Penhale-Thomas will step in. Please can everyone ensure that mobile phones are switched off or switched to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda, and I will ask the officer to present a brief summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Officers and members are reminded to refer to the page numbers contained in the public version of the agenda report pack. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point, but I would ask that with the exception of myself as the chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference. Thank you. Whether attending in the chamber or remotely, if any members or officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press... Sorry? No worries. If any members or officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window. I will come to you in order that I receive the requests. If you're in the chamber, please switch on the microphone on your desk and speak directly into the mic to allow those who are remote to hear you clearly. Please lower your hand once you've finished speaking. The instant messaging chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Scrutiny will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout its duration, and where necessary will mute those not being used. I'll ask officers to introduce themselves when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. I'll now proceed to the agenda. So, item number 1, apologies for absence. I will now ask the Scrutiny Officer to announce the apologies. Sorry. I will now ask the Scrutiny Officer to announce the apologies for absences received. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Paul Davis, Councillor Paula Ford, Councillor Della Hughes and Councillor Johanna Llewellyn-Hopkins. Councillor Ross Penhale-Thomas has advised he'll be in attendance but may be late joining the meeting. We've also had apologies from the leader, Councillor Hugh David, and the Cabinet Member for Resources, Councillor Harold Williams. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. On to item 2, declarations of interest. If any member has an interest to declare in any matter on the agenda, please click on the raise hand icon and I will come to you in turn for you to declare your interest. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. It's item 417 in the report, page 14, as a former member of the member of staff in BCBC Public Protection. Okay.
Not a problem, thank you. Any others? Lovely, moving on. Item 3, medium-term financial strategy 2023-24 to 26-27. I'll ask the Chief Officer Finance, Performance and Change to present the report. I'll then call upon members who indicate they wish to speak by clicking on the raise hand button icon in turn. Thank you.
Many thanks, Chair. Can I just introduce myself for the sake of the recording? So I'm Caris Lord, and as you said, I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. The purpose of this report this afternoon is to present you with the draft medium-term financial strategy for the period 2023-2024 through to 2026-27, and that actually includes a financial forecast for that period, but also a detailed draft revenue budget for the coming financial year. Some members will have received monitoring reports this year outlining the financial pressures during the year, which have been brought about by residual cost pressures and loss of income from the pandemic, additional inflationary pressures, and also the impact of the cost of living crisis on both pay and prices, in particular fuel and energy prices. So this context has made budget planning for the coming financial year more uncertain and certainly more challenging than usual. In addition to the issues outlined, the Council is still looking to address issues with regards to homelessness, but also to strengthen and support social care, which, as this committee will know, is experiencing increased demand and costs, as well as more complex cases in both adults and children's services. So the report gives detail for you with regards to that context, and I won't go in it in great detail, Chair, but just some of the things to point out to you, that this budget is being proposed in a period of tremendous pressure, and also just to remind members that since 2010 the Council has actually found £73 million worth of savings in our revenue budget. A number of principles were adopted when we're looking at the budget for next year, and in particular it was about the Council would seek to protect the most vulnerable people in our communities. So you'll see details in the report at section 4 of what the proposed budgets are for the coming financial year. In particular then, for this particular committee, the proposal in the budget is to spend £92.7 million on social care and wellbeing services in the coming year. And you'll see from the appendix that it is proposed to fund considerable pressures in this service due to the increased demand and complexities of care required, as I've already mentioned. Welsh Government announced our provisional local government settlement on the 14th of December last year. The final settlement will not be announced until the end of February, and therefore the medium-term financial strategy and the budget for next year are proposed on the basis of this provisional settlement. Because the settlement was so late, we do not anticipate much change at all between the provisional and the final settlement. So the reported increase for Wales in the settlement was 7.9%, and for Bridgend that's a reported increase of 7.7%. We have had information with regards to specific grants, but at the current time this remains at an all Wales level, and we do not know yet the impact for our authority. But that will come before we get the final settlement. So the draft budget in front of you today assumes a 6% increase in council tax for the coming year. This increase is less than the rate of inflation and is required to enable the council to meet the considerable financial challenges that we face going forward, not least the ongoing issues of inflation, but also the unprecedented number of financial pressures that the council is facing as it tries to support its most vulnerable residents. Just very quickly going forward, the council has been given an indicative increase in its budget allocation for Welsh Government for 3.1% for the financial year 24-25. This, as you will know, is still below the level of inflation. Therefore, we have done some modelling going forward, which has assumed an annual increase in the council tax of 4.5% for the years 24-25 and 25-26. I would stress to members that this has been assumed for planning purposes only, and obviously these figures will be reviewed during the coming year. So the draft revenue budget for the coming year is shown for you in table 6 of this afternoon's report. And in drafting the budget, the following has been proposed. So cost pressures of £10.7 million would be funded under this proposed budget, and these are detailed for you in Appendix A to the report. In line with the principles that I did briefly outline, the proposals are that there are costs associated with supporting and protecting our most vulnerable residents, especially children. Funding to increase our ability to support the older persons population, as this is placing additional pressures on our adult social services and their budget. And also increased costs of commission services in the social care sector following the increase in the real living wage, and in general following the increase in the national living wage announced by UK government. As well as those pressures, the budget proposals do identify £3.2 million of savings, and these are detailed for you in Appendix B of today's report. So what we're asking, Chair, these are proposals, as you will know. They are now being discussed by all of the scrutiny committees. That will be complete by the beginning of next week. And so that we're proposing here, it's an outlined budget for the coming and the longer term financial position for the council. As I said, the proposals are now subject to consultation, both with yourselves as elected members, and also the public consultation is due to end at the end of this week. And the findings from both of these exercises will be considered when drafting the final budget for next year. So if I may, Chair, I'd just like to take you to the recommendations in section 9 of this afternoon's report, which requests that committee consider the information contained in the report and in the attached appendices, and also that committee determines whether to make any comments or recommendations for consolidation and inclusion into the report to Cabinet on the draft MTFS, including the proposed budget pressures and budget reduction proposals within the remit of this scrutiny committee as part of the budget consultation process. Many thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Caris. That was very comprehensive, so thank you very much. Committee, before I take us through this, I'm just going to remind us that as a committee we're in quite a unique position compared to our fellow scrutiny committees, in that it is budgetary pressures that we're looking at here rather than budgetary cuts as such. So I just want us to be minded as to whether there's sufficient, adequate and robust scrutiny of this, and we need to be minded that it's in order to protect the services as a whole that social services is under pressures rather than cuts. So I just want us to be minded of that as we go through. And with that in mind, I'm going to take us through and ask if anybody has any questions. So if you do, please raise your hands. I'm going to go through page by page, pages to page, and see if anybody has any questions, and please do feel free to raise your hands. So starting on the background and budget narrative, pages 3 to 5. Does anybody have any questions? Lovely, no hands going up, so I will move on. Corporate financial overview, pages 5 to 8. Councillor Kaparos.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a quick query, really, regarding on page 6, the paragraph that starts an increase in need in children's social care. It refers to, in that paragraph, the Welsh Government developing proposals to eliminate private profit from the care of looked after children, but says that this is resulting in an increase in the cost of independent placements. That seems a little bit counterintuitive to me, all other things remaining equal. Are these providers reclassifying what used to go towards profit as some sort of new cost base, or is this a result of the supply reducing because of the inability to claim profit?
Councillor Gebby.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Kaparos. What I would say is that we find ourselves in a position whereby the for-profit providers of children's residential care are trying to get out of the market here in Wales. For some of the costs that we look at, we are needing to place over the border, I want to say. They are still for profit. We can't change that. And what I would also say is that any complex care, actually, that's an additional cost because of the staffing requirements in relation to that. So I'll let Claire, I give you a more technical answer, but we are where we are is what I want to say. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you. Claire, can I bring you in?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I think just to build on what the Deputy Leader has said, that there's a number of factors at play here. So we've got the Welsh Government policy agenda, as Councillor Gebby has said. That's meaning that some providers are reviewing their business models and choosing to exit the market. It means that those providers who remain in the market have far more children and young people at any point where placements are being sought than availability. So it is, in a sense, a seller's market. So supply side, it's very, not very nice to talk about children in this way as commodified, but I think you know, from an economic perspective, people will understand the language that I'm using. We're also experiencing increasing difficulty in being able to find a placement at any time, and we're having to have more bespoke and individual placements at any time where we've got a number of children where we're having to support them outside of regulated settings, and that brings a cost premium to make sure that those settings are as safe as we can possibly make them. What we are doing is to remodel at the same time, and we're developing our in-house provision as the Scrutiny Committee will know. But until that provision comes on stream, we are reliant and need to commission services from the independent sector until we've got sufficiency of supply ourselves as a local authority. So that's why we continue to commission in that way. And then we are also seeing the complexity of needs of children and young people increase, certainly post-COVID pandemic, the impact of those extended lockdowns and a lot of the issues which I'm sure we've had previous scrutiny around, but that obviously impacts on the cost. And the final element is workforce, isn't it? I think all parts of the economy are experiencing significant issues in terms of workforce. I saw that Aldi this morning were increasing costs of their workforce by 20% year on year. This impacts on our care workforce, and then it obviously impacts on ourselves as the Commissioners of Care. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Claire. Do you want to come back in, Councillor Kaparis, or are you satisfied?
No, that was comprehensive. Thank you.
Fantastic, lovely. Thank you. Do you want to come back in, John? Right, so moving on, continuing through pages 5 to 8, if anybody else has any other questions. I did actually have a question on page 8 if nobody else wants to come in. Now, I noticed that we've got alternative delivery models, we've got efficiency savings, and we've got changes to service provision. And I just wondered if there was any remodelling that was going on in social services. And if that was the case, what are we seeking to do just under these headings? I don't know if there is anything at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we've got a significant transformation programme in social services and wellbeing, and that covers a number of areas as you would expect. It includes the transformation of our social work practice, strength-based practice in both adults and children's social care, and we're implementing new models of practice, signs of safety in children's social care, and a strength-based model. Those models of practice are based on what people can do, and are enabling and promote independence, and that can often result in a different level of care and support that we commission ourselves. And over the years, we have seen significant reductions in the number of hours of care and support that individuals have needed. A big part of our transformation programme is around prevention. We've got very well developed preventative services here in Bridgend. We've got alternative delivery models for our cultural offer through Arwen, for our leisure offer through our partnership with Halo. Both of those provide very good value for us, and the reason that they sit within my directorate is because the focus is on the most vulnerable in a lot of those service offers, and seen some really excellent innovations, swimming with dementia, a lot of the rehab services for carers as part of that preventative offer. But then when people do need care and support, we are remodelling that provision. I've already referred to the residential remodelling programme. We've had over the years development of alternative models of provision for older people, such as extra care provision. We're exploring business cases for the development of extra care and remodelling our in-house and our commissioned care and support at home services, because we know if people go through a reablement pathway that they are far more likely to be independent and regain and retain independence and need less care. So a big focus on remodelling our care and support at home. I've got my colleague on the call this afternoon in case there's any questions around learning disabilities, but a big transformation programme around learning disabilities, moving away from institution supported living, needing to modernise our day opportunities and to look at more opportunities around supported employment, for example. So big programme of work there and plans around learning disabilities, and similarly with mental health as well. Lots and lots of work going around every aspect of the directorate, really.
Jane? Councillor Gebbie, sorry.
That's all right. I answer to a lot of things, Chair, so don't worry about it. Yes, I do. I suppose the contribution I wish to make was, as a regional partnership board, one of the things that we've got on our agenda is transformation. We've just had direction from Welsh Government that they expect to see some significant transformation across the region. So that's not just Bridgend and County Borough, that's our two other councils within our health board, Ancum, Taff, Morgannwg. I think what's interesting to note is the RPB is responsible for community delivery. So it may not be a nursing or local government sort of care and support requirements, but it's about preventative measures. So I think that's a conversation that we'll be having at the RPB. I've just put it on the agenda actually for the next meeting. But I think that's worth noting, because it doesn't matter what we think as local authorities, the direction of travel from Welsh Government is that we have to utilise what we have. And there are some responsibilities around that within my role, which is fine, but I think that's a further discussion and you might want to consider that at a later scrutiny date.
Thank you, I will do. That's very pertinent. Thank you. Moving on. Sorry. If there's no more questions on pages 5 to 8, I'll take the members through to education on page 9, but as to the relevancy in this committee, I'm not quite sure if we'll have any questions on that. And it looks like we don't. Moving on to pages 10 to 11, social care and wellbeing remit. Are there any questions on this, please? If there's no questions from members, I'm just going to very briefly run through some notes that I've got. So it's the second largest spend after education, obviously, and the focus is on strengthening practice, improving the whole system, targeted preventative services, and supporting our workforce. It's been highly dependent on short-term grant funding. And I noted, I think I asked Caris a question in the full council about that. There's an ageing population which is requiring more care and support needs, and that's a challenge on the supply side as well. There's children meeting statutory duties that we have to spend significant investment into, and there's reviews that have been ongoing as well that have impacted on that. We need to ensure that there's efficient and cost-effective set of arrangements for children and families with the right model of practice and targeting preventative services, increasing numbers of residential accommodation and care support that's coming in on these pressures, the volume and complexity. I've already had conversations with Councillor Gebbie and with Claire Marchant about this. These are significant pressures that are coming in, members. There's pressures in children's, in mental health services, older people's services. It's across the board. It's a top and tail. And supply and commission services, there's issues around agency staff and inflation in increases in pay, market exit probability from suppliers, and the fact, again, I raised this matter about the fact that the council will always be a safety net provider. So with all of that in mind, and there's a lot there that is pushing these pressures onto the service, do members have any other questions regarding pages 10 and 11 in this report, please? Thank you. I'll take the silence as a no. I think we have covered quite a bit of that already, so I'm quite content with that. Moving on to pages 12 to 17. These are pretty much under the remit of other committees, so I'm not particularly expecting many questions about this, but if members have any questions, would you like to speak up, please? No questions. It looks like it might be quite a swift meeting with no questions. So I'll take members on to pages 17 to 23. This is about the financial context, Welsh Government provisional local government settlement, items like this. Any questions on this at all? Councillor Williams, can I bring you in?
Thanks very much. Can I just apologise? I'm in a school at the moment and there's a netball tournament going on outside with lots of bouncing balls and screaming. But my question was on the 6% council tax, and it was more pertinent to the other scrutiny meetings I've been in, but it's just because there's an ongoing consultation. I wanted to make sure that residents were confident that any views they put forward will be taken into consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. Would you like to take that, Councillor Gebbie?
I can reassure Councillor Williams that any comments that residents make will be discussed, debated, and not necessarily acted on, but taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you content with that, Councillor Williams? Would you like to come back in? No, I presume you're content. Okay, lovely. Thank you. I thought that would be the case. Any other councillors? Any questions? No. Moving on. We'll move down to page 23 and 28 and 28 to 29. So council tax. Any questions on this, please, councillors? And again, I can see no questions coming forth on this, so I will take us to page 23 to 30. Any questions on this section, please, councillors? Thank you. Councillor Gebbie, I don't think you're meant to ask questions of yourself.
I'm not going to ask questions. Actually, I'm just going to advise members of my own position in relation to health and social care, particularly terms and conditions of health and social care workers. We were advised earlier today that Lidl's have just put up their pay. So, you know, I keep talking about until we value our social care staff, then there's not going to be any movement on this. I think one of the conversations that both Claire and I have already had today was that until we get some community, domiciliary, home help type of arrangements that's set in good stead, and as Claire referenced earlier, a rebalancing of where we are, particularly in relation to our reablement of our provision, then there's going to be no improvement in the health board. And I think we all need to be cognizant of that fact, and I think we need to have a conversation about it. We've got an ageing population. We know that the demands on our service are increasing. I appreciate that we do need to consider how we're delivering those. We need to be cost effective. We need to be delivering what works and what's right for each resident, and that can be quite different. You know, each person is an individual. But I think we need to have a conversation about how we value our staff. Our staff, I believe, are underpaid. So my plea to all members on the call is whatever representations you can make in that regard, that would be enormously helpful. And I do agree with Welsh Government directive about a national care service as well. I think that would be of benefit to everyone because everybody would be on the same terms and conditions. We wouldn't be robbing other authorities for their staff and likewise them with us, because that's quite often the case at the minute. So I think that's just something that I just wanted to advise members. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gebbie. That was actually going to be my next question, as to whether we would be robbing from next door neighbours. But no, thank you for that, because it's quite bleak, is that, to realise that we are in this situation, and it is increasingly more difficult with external pressures that are cropping up. Not only do we have pressures within the council for this directorate, we also have pressures externally that are pushing down on us as well. So thank you very much for pointing that out. If members don't have any more questions on 23 to 30, I'm going to move us on to 30 to 31, please. Councillor Watham.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question relates to page 31, item 4.21.2, where mention is made of continuing costs arising from the Social Services and Wellbeing Wales Act 2014. What are they, and will they all be fully funded to ensure that local authorities don't have to absorb the costs from their revenue budgets, which are already under significant pressure? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Watham. Who would like to take that? Claire?
Yeah, so the Social Services and Wellbeing Act is the key legislation that we work to in social services for adults and children in Wales. There are 11 parts of the Act, and it covers all aspects of what we do in terms of safeguarding, in terms of assessing and meeting need. And I think when the reference is made to the ongoing responsibilities of meeting the requirements of the Act, I think as the report highlights, and as the Chair has already said, you know, the population of the county borough is growing, the average age and the number of older people within the county borough is growing. We have people with significant levels of disability, significant numbers of carers, more and more children and children and families that we're working with in terms of child protection and care experienced. So whilst we are funded on a formula from Welsh Government which reflects for both adults and children the vulnerabilities and the numbers within our population, we are seeing both the overall numbers and we are seeing the needs of our population growing, and that's impacting on us meeting our social care duties. Within that Act, there are some very specific duties on a number of authorities in Bridgend, and I'll just highlight one that the Deputy Leader has recently written to Welsh Government around. So because we've got Secure Estate in Bridgend, we've got HMP Park. When the Social Services and Wellbeing Act came into effect in 2016, it brought with us additional statutory responsibilities for local authorities that hosted Secure Estate for all the social care needs of children, young people within and adults within that secure estate. There's been a significant budget pressure on us in that area, despite the fact we did get money from Welsh Government when those responsibilities came in. The need within that population isn't meeting, it isn't currently being met by what was that ring-fenced allocation that came to us as an authority. So that's a bit of an example of where you get the money at the time, but as the needs of the population that you're responsible for increase, it's not quite covered in the allocation that you've got, and you need to make representation.
Thank you. Would either of the Cabinet members like to come in on this? No? Lovely, not a problem. Does that answer your question, Councillor Watham?
Yes, it goes some way to answering the question. Thank you, Chair.
Fantastic. Just following on from that as well, can I just ask about the longer term costs resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic? Can we just have a bit of a drill down on that and what those longer term costs and what the implications are and the impact that it's having, please? Thank you.
So I suppose the quickest and most effective response I can give you is the demand on services. We already know from various assessments, whether that be in social services, education, any third sector or voluntary organisations, we know that the demand on their services is increasing exponentially. We can see that in our child protection figures. So we keep talking about the rising costs of COVID. Actually, it's people's well-being out in the communities it's just around the demand for our services as a general.
Councillor Good.
Thanks, Chair. Just to add to that, I think the other thing to consider here is within leisure and culture. Of course, we still have a considerable shortfall in the number of members, for example, at Halo, and people taking up Arwen's offers as our cultural partner. So there is still something to be considered there in terms of rebuilding that, and therefore the costs are associated by not having as large a membership or as much participation as we have previously had with those services.
Thank you. That's much appreciated on both responses. Sorry, just trying to grapple with my paperwork. So if there's no more questions on that from members, I would like to take members to pages 41 to 43, please. These are the budget pressures on Appendix A. I don't know. What I will do is I'll go through them SW1 and go through that way, and then, Amanda, Councillor Williams, I know you had some questions, but if I go through them one by one, do you want to do yours as one block, or do you want to go through them?
I'm happy to go through them. My first question starts as an overall for them all.
Okay, yeah, if you want to do that then.
Yeah, it's just that we've got figures for 23-24, but nothing for 24-25 in most of the columns. So I was just wondering if we're going to be seeing these pressures repeating over future years as well.
Yeah, so these are recurring pressures, Councillor Williams. What you don't see going into the columns that are after the first column are what we might anticipate to be perhaps the inflationary uplift for future years. So to take that first one around real living wage, we have got the indicative for 24-25 because that's already been published. We'll know there'll be a further cost pressure in 25-26 and 26-27, but because those aren't published yet, we haven't got those figures in there. Similarly, across the other areas, really. There are corporate budgets which come into effect every year and applied in respect of CPI across all contracts and across all sort of pay awards, and all of these areas in social services and well-being will be subject to those inflationary pressures as well as the rest of council budgets. But it's only that one in terms of real living wage where we've got some indication to date what it's going to look like for 24-25.
Thank you, Claire. Caris, can I bring you in as well, please?
If I may, Chair, just to reassure members, if these budget pressures are approved in the budget, they will then go into the base budget for the service. So as Claire has already said, any increases due to pay or inflation would automatically be picked up once they're in the base budget. So what you would see, so this will cover that existing service, whether we buy it by whether we commission it in or whether we provide it directly. Where you would see pressures coming in maybe next year would be if the demand for that service and the quantity of that service needed to increase. So just by way of clarification, Chair.
Thank you, Caris. I appreciate that. Councillor Williams, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Right, I'll move through on SW1 and see if anybody has any questions. SW2, SW3, SW4, SW5. Amanda, Councillor Williams, would you like to come in?
Sorry, mine was on SSW4. It's the 758,000 increased pressure on the learning disabilities budget. And I just wondered if we could have an overview of what this entails. Thanks.
Certainly. Who would like to take that?
Oops. Sorry, Friday afternoon. May I bring my colleague in Mark Wilkinson, because I anticipated we might have some questions around learning disabilities, and I asked him to attend to cover that area. Thank you.
Absolutely. Welcome to the committee, Mark. Would you like to come in here?
Can you see me?
We can indeed, and we can hear you lovely as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the welcome. Mark Wilkinson, Group Manager, covering learning disability, mental health and substance misuse services in adult social care.
Did you hear the question, Mark, which was around the budget pressure and what's underpinning the budget pressure in learning disabilities?
The sound went a bit skew, but thanks for repeating it. I've got it now. So those budget pressures, that budget pressure of 758,000 is in the contracts we have for supported living services. So we commission four organisations to provide support to people to live in their own homes. And we've had a learning disability service development plan for some years now, which has had as one of its intentions to give people more choice about what they do during their day. And we've been working with our service providers to offer alternatives, particularly to day service provision for people with a learning disability, to give them a bigger choice and range of activities that they can engage in. What the pandemic did, because day services were scaled down considerably and people were at home, as all of us were, what that did was accelerate that service development. And a number of people have decided post pandemic, if we can say that they would rather be at home engaging in activities rather than go to day service, or have a mix of the two. So that put pressure on the providers to provide more staff, which put the costs of the contracts up as a consequence. Also, in addition to that, we have an aging population of people with a learning disability. We have increasing complexity of needs, partly because of the aging process. So the level of staff support has also been increased because of that. Also, all the cost of living increases, the wage pressures, the pressures on prices, on the running of houses, all the pressures that we know about have meant that the providers have increased their hourly rate that they charge us. And so all of these pressures combined together have resulted in this budget pressure.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Williams, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Claire, would you like to come back?
Yeah, just to briefly add to what Mark has said, we can see quite a change here in terms of the population of people with learning disabilities. We also know there's significant pressures, don't we, in terms of the older persons population, and our model of day opportunities in Bridgend is a mixed model. So people with older people with various care and support needs access those services, as well as people with learning disabilities. And post-pandemic, if I can also use that phrase, we're seeing far more older people, pressures on carers, pressures on care and support at home, accessing local day services, because you might logically think that the budget could shift from day services if less people with learning disabilities are attending into the pressures within supported living that Mark has described. We're doing a very detailed piece of work at the moment with an external expert organisation in learning disabilities to understand what that means for our operating model going forward in day opportunities, but also for learning disabilities overall. Because if you look at the budget overspend at the moment in learning disabilities, is actually far in excess of this budget pressure. So we know that we need a sustainable operating model for learning disabilities, which is bringing together that service model and the finances that need to resource it. So just wanted to explain that context, Chair, as well.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, are you content with that as well?
Yes, thank you very much.
Lovely, thank you. Right, continuing on. Thank you, Mark, as well for that contribution. Members, do we have any questions on, and I have been saying it wrong, I do appreciate, I was saying SW5, SSW5. Any questions? Councillor Williams, is that a legacy hand or do you want to come back in?
No, I've got a question on this. Apologies, I've reserved all my questions for this section, so
that's fine. That's not
on most of them. Yes, children's residential out of county. I know I've asked Claire this in a different forum, but how many children have we got out of county? What are we doing to reduce this? Because 1.4 million obviously is a significant sum of money. And are we concerned about whether we'd be able to staff to capacity given the issues with recruiting at the moment?
Thank you, Councillor Williams, for the question. Yeah, it is a real issue for us, isn't it, in terms of not just out of county, but the increasing number of children in Bridgend who are in residential placements. So it's the two things. It's really the residential placements that are driving the cost. So in terms of out of area, we'll have a number of children who are in independent foster agency placements out of area, a number who live with extended friends and family out of area, but both within Bridgend and out of area, we are seeing that increase in terms of the numbers, which I think are up to 20 now in independent residential settings, and that is really, as I think we answered in terms of the earlier question, we're seeing the costs of those independent residential placements increase for all the reasons we set out in the answer to the earlier question. And there's some sort of key issues here for a number of those independent residential placements. If we had the right well-supported foster carers available to us in a timely way, we could reduce that population. So this is part of the, I suppose, the sort of operating model now with the new hub that will be developed later this year, because we'll have co-located in that setting the assessment unit, where we do need to bring children into a residential setting, maybe for in an emergency or at relatively short notice. But that setting will be co-located with our foster team. And we've got some additional monies coming through from Welsh Government around a therapeutic model that will be across both fostering and residential provision, to be working very intensively with those children, hopefully to step them down to very well supported foster carers who will be in a position to meet their needs. So it's really important that we've got that plan, because yes, we have seen a significant more than doubling of children in residential placements in the last year.
Councillor Gebbie.
Thank you very much, Chair. I suppose my comment would be that I just want to reassure members that some of our young people who I've met are in the most appropriate placement for them now, irrespective of the cost. I don't believe that we should look at a child when we're considering placing them. I don't think we should consider the cost. I don't think that should be a factor. It should be the most appropriate placement for them to be, where they are going to thrive. So, and I'm reassured that that is the case because of some of the casework that I'm very cognizant of, is what I want to say. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gebbie. Does that answer your question, Councillor Williams?
It does, yes, and I absolutely agree with Councillor Gebbie there. It should be the child, not the cost, but obviously the public need to understand where some of this money is being spent.
Yeah, I agree as well. I just wanted to come back with a quick question on this as well. Where we're using more residential and out of county as well, are there themes emerging that are as to why we're using this more? Is there a thread through this? Is there anything underlying that at all that we need to know about, or is it just?
It's just the increase in numbers that we have of care experienced children and the reliance on services to provide for them. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair, what I would say is, although our numbers have increased, we're still relatively low. So of the 400 care experienced children, the proportion in residential is really quite low, and the numbers in Bridgend, proportionately when benchmarked to other authorities and other care experienced populations, are low as well. So it's obviously an area where we've got significant focus, not least and most importantly because of the complexity of need of those children.
Lovely, thank you very much. So moving on, SSW6. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, sorry, I have got questions on most of these. It was coupled with SSW3 as well, because obviously this is about IAA and also so an increase in social workers. And I just wanted to raise the question, in education, we looked at a reduction in schools budgets, and I was concerned then that this would mean the support staff, and I know a number of schools to deal with safeguarding concerns have got internal social workers. So I'd be concerned that these were the sorts of people who might be involved in any potential redundancies, and then likewise have an increased result in an increased workload in social services. So I just wanted to raise that question.
Claire, would you like to take that?
Yeah, very happy to take that one. I think one of the really positive developments in the last number of months has been the re-establishment of the schools safeguarding forum. So regular interface meetings now between colleagues from safeguarding, you know, Dave Wright's team, the education safeguarding lead, and the vulnerable groups team, and schools to really improve the way that we work around education safeguarding issues. You know, significant numbers of our referrals into safeguarding are from schools. You would expect that to be the case, but how we work with schools to support de-escalation where at all possible. I know that schools are raising the impact on them of the increasing number of safeguarding strategy meetings, and our whole system really is operating with lots of increase of activity at that high end of safeguarding, more Section 47 investigations than previously, more children on the child protection register, more care experienced children, and all of that stems from the increased number of referrals that we're seeing at the front door. So I think it's referred to in the cover report about the piece of work that's been done between safeguarding, education, family support around how we can target our preventative services to safely manage the risks and the dangers in family settings with the right support outside of statutory services, and of course that joint working with schools and the experts that are in schools around safeguarding is absolutely critical to that work.
Thank you. Councillor Gebby?
Thank you very much, Chair. I suppose I'd just like a bit of clarity around how you think this is going to impact on schools, because the IAA is the managed team currently, which we would like to appoint on a permanent, staff on a permanent basis, but that's a different conversation. But the additional social work support officers are actually freeing up our social workers, and it's keeping our caseloads down because they're getting through their work so much quicker. So this is a public meeting, so I need to be careful how I phrase this. I don't want to say that we have lower end staff delivering social services. That's not the case, but I don't know why we would pay social workers to sit there when we can have a lower grade sitting there at a computer typing in information to a system, is what I want to say. I think that's very supportive. It means that we're having better outcomes and better results from the IAA currently. In relation to education and any cuts, I was actually in my own school governors meeting last night. One of the conversations that we had was around the budget. Every school is different, of course. However, this isn't the budget implications of a 2% cut will not have any impact on staffing in my own school. Thank you very much.
No problem. Just to unpack that, did you have a question that you wanted to ask back to Councillor? Yeah. Councillor Williams, did you want to come back to give any clarity on that, please?
Sorry, I didn't hear Councillor Gebby's question then.
Sorry, I'll bring Councillor Gebby back to reframe the question for you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Apologies, Councillor Williams. I was just slightly confused, or I don't know if that's even the right term, but quite. I don't understand the 2% cut in relation to the SSW3 and SSW6. So if you could explain that for me, because I was in a governor's meeting myself last night, and a 2% cut in education wouldn't affect any of these social services budget pressures. So I wanted to understand what information you were actually looking for.
Okay, thanks. What I was trying to ask was if schools, and I'm not saying any schools would make redundancies, but we have to look at the whole budget. And whilst this is social services, if schools were to look at any support staff, if they have to make redundancies, are we concerned that it might impact on the safeguarding referrals that come in that would increase the work within social services?
No, definitely not. It wouldn't have any direct impact.
Does that answer your question for you, Councillor Williams?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Cheers. Moving on, SSW7. Did you want to come in on that? No, sorry, it's a legacy hand. Sorry, yep, no worries. SSW8. I did actually have a question on this myself. It's just a point of clarity. Reading this, it looks as if there's two job roles within this. Is it just the one? It is, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry.
It is, Chair. Sorry. Apologies if it's not clear.
I think it's the way I'm reading it as well, in that it could be split into two sort of things. So thank you for that clarity. SSW9. Councillor Williams.
Thanks very much. I've asked Claire this in a different forum again, but just for clarity for the public, I wondered if she could explain the increased pressure on direct payments. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you again for the question, Councillor Williams. The increased pressure relates to two things really. Again, the increase in need that we're seeing, that the vast majority of direct payments in children's social care support families and children with disabilities. And we know, again, post-COVID pandemic, the increase in pressure in those family scenarios, and that a direct payment is actually a very cost-effective way and an effective way, most importantly, in supporting the pressures within families and enabling families to secure their own support. It brings into social care a workforce that perhaps don't want to be recruited into a general care role, but are very happy because of a connection to become a direct payment PA for a child and a family with whom they have a connection. So it's around children with disabilities, and it is an effective way of meeting those needs without having to utilise a commissioned care service.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your question, Councillor Williams?
Yes, thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Moving on, SSW10. SSW11. Councillor Williams.
This is my final question. The £2 million pressures in adult social care. I'm just wondering if we think this is going to be enough, particularly now we've had this announcement that hospitals can also now start discharging without a care package. Is this going to impact on social services and the work that we will have to do as an authority? Thanks.
Do I think it's enough? I'm very conscious always as a corporate director that whatever is invested via these pressures in social care services impacts on the rest of the council and all the other priorities of the council. Equally, as I always say, I do have a statutory duty to advise you on the resources that social care requires. And I think if you read this pressure across to the current budget overspend, you can see that whilst this budget pressure would be very welcoming in helping to alleviate those budget pressures, that it doesn't equal the current overspend position in adult social care. There's a significant number of pressures in adult social care. Some of them are specifically pulled out in other pressures, so mental health and learning disabilities. But if we look at the situation around older adults particularly, there are a number of different areas here that the Deputy Leader has already referred to: the workforce pressures and how, unless we address those workforce pressures, which requires us to pay fair terms and conditions in terms of both the the staff within the council and commissioned services, we won't meet our statutory needs. You heard recently in a council meeting from the chief executive of the health board about the number of people who are delayed in hospital at any time, and a number of those will be waiting for a package of care. If that package of care became available, we could not delay securing that package of care for a financial reason, in the same way that we would always meet the needs of vulnerable children in the way that we need to. We would do the same for adults. And we have seen a reduction in the number of care hours, particularly in our reablement service, but also we've had a number of people waiting for care and support in long-term care. If we can meet those needs, there's obviously a significant budget implication there. And by implementing the model which Welsh Government have sort of written out to health boards around discharge to recover and assess, and more people being discharged more quickly, obviously those costs are costs that come to us as a local authority. There's also pressures around our care homes, that all of the sort of pay and prices issues that we know across all contracts are in place. Our care homes in Bridgend operate at very high occupancy levels. Some of the parts of Wales, indeed our own region, you can see that there's capacity in that care home market. There really isn't in Bridgend. We operate at 95% occupancy in care homes across the county borough. And we're doing a cost of care exercise at the moment. We need to understand in quite granular detail what it costs to provide a care home bed, and that needs to be reflected in our commissioning arrangements. That will result in a fee setting strategy coming to Cabinet for consideration before the end of the financial year, and so indicatively there are some costs there. We also see pressures within our social work services and social work leadership, which we would want to reflect through this pressure, and getting that social work part of what we do right. We've got new statutory responsibility through liberty protection safeguards, for example, is really critical to the final element we would be looking to support through this particular area. It links into Councillor Good's cabinet portfolio, is that we know in terms of prevention that when you've got it in place, it works. And we've got an inequitable situation at the moment in that we've got local community coordinators in part of the county borough funded in a particular way, but not across the whole county borough. And people will escalate up to statutory, won't they, unless you've got that right targeted preventative approach. But overall, this doesn't meet the current level of overspend, and I do need to advise you of that as a scrutiny committee.
Councillor Williams, are you content with that?
Yes, I don't think anyone's content with the fact that there's not enough money there, but I'm content with the answer.
Absolutely, yes, quite right. If nobody else has any questions, I just want to come back with a question, and I think this might be for the cabinet members rather than the director. We've heard today, certainly under budget pressures, that we have a directorate here that is under pressure, significantly under pressure, massively, and not just from, how would you phrase it, everyday pressures. There's external extra pressures that are bearing down on the directorate. Now, the other directorates are seeing significant cuts as well. And my question is, we're not seeing cuts in this directorate, we're seeing pressures, and there's a difference. But how long are we going to go as a council seeing these pressures as pressures before the other directorates start to fold with their cuts, and the cuts there start to impact on the pressures here, and that we have to see cuts? Is that going to be a reality in the near future? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Chair. I suppose the first thing I want to say is it's not going to be immediate. We are talking at least 2 to 3 years in social services before we see any benefit of any strategy that we put in. There is a direction of travel from Welsh Government about how we spend our money, what we spend it on. It's all, pretty prescribed as a general rule. One of the things you would have heard about is the grant funding that we used to have as part of our consequential and our settlement. We don't have those anymore. We have a lot fewer grants. We're reliant on a lot fewer grants, I should say, in social services, but that was after representations that we couldn't forward plan. Social services has been taking hits and cuts into their directorate for 12 years now. We can't sustain that. We also can't do is walk away because we don't want to, because we've run out of money. It doesn't matter what presents at the front door, we will always have to deal with it, and we always have. I can't see that position changing anytime soon. And whilst we talk about cuts, actually some of that has just been reorganisation. We don't deliver some of the certain services in-house anymore. So I think we need to have a different conversation. And I think the whole of public services is at risk at the minute. So I'm giving you my honest answer. How long is a piece of string? I couldn't tell you, Chair. Sorry.
Councillor Good, did you want to come in?
I mean, I think I would just echo the Deputy Leader's point of view. I think as we've seen over the last few years, we're sort of in the middle of a storm that doesn't seem to abate, and every time you think you've conquered one challenge, another one has arisen. And to be blunt, I think we'll be dealing with the consequences of those 2 years of the pandemic across the public sector for decades to come. I mean, the impact, as we've seen in leisure work on our child provision, where these children who have spent 2 years of being separated from peers, not having that simple ability to interact with adults or children their own age, will have a lasting impact. And I think across all levels of government, we have to accept that and find a way to deal with it. I have a lot of sympathy for WG in what they're having to deal with, but I think equally there needs to be some flexibility and understanding that individual local authorities understand what we need, sometimes better than perhaps something prescribed from Cardiff Bay. Having said that, we are getting a lot of support from them as well. I mean, from my own officers, we've just seen an uplift, as the Chair will be aware, in terms of housing and homelessness services, which is desperately needed. We all know what condition we are in terms of housing, and every day we are seeing more and more people who are being pushed from their residence into temporary accommodation, and that's just one element of such a wide range of things that are going wrong and dysfunctioning in our wider society at the moment. So, to the Deputy's point, I don't know where the edge of the forest is, but I guess we'll keep ploughing on.
Thank you. That's very honest and very comprehensive. Yeah, and very depressing. It is. You're right. And I do wonder at which stage does the bounce back and pushback happen, and Welsh Government and Westminster both start to realise that actually these pressures cannot continue. They're unsustainable within councils, and they can't continue. There has to be a release.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just for reassurance, I am quite vociferous in my representations to both Welsh Government and Westminster, in so much as we need to fairly fund public services. That's across the board. It doesn't matter. I will represent that view continuously, and until we get some parity, I think I might just be in a coffin one day with that sort of coming out. Thanks very much, Chair.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at that, but at the severity of it is the thought of the coffin. Sorry. I do tend to agree though as well that actually we as a council need to continue to push back on this, because there isn't the elasticity there anymore, and it's very, very difficult to get a balanced budget on these issues, and it's real people's lives that are at risk here. When we're talking about social services, it's not facts and figures and just irrelevancies. It is actually people's lives that are on the line here. So it is important that we push back for this. So thank you. Thank you for the questions there. Continuing on, I'm going to take us through the next couple of pages. However, page 43 is about budget reduction proposals, of which there are none for social services, obviously, and council-wide budgets and fees and charges. It's a cost remit, so Pages 43, I don't know if members have any questions. Oh, I'm going to bring the scrutiny officer in here, Meryl.
Thank you, Chair. Just sort of before we get to the point where invitees are asked if they wish to leave, I just wanted to make sure members are satisfied. This is the opportunity really that they've had all the information they wanted on the pressures, and they're happy that they're necessary and robustly calculated and sufficient, because obviously once the once the invitees have left, you've lost the opportunity to ask any questions. And also to flag, Chair, I think you're aware that we've had a question sent in from Councillor Alex Williams, which you've asked me to read out. And I apologise, this may have had part of an answer from questions asked by yourself, Chair, and Councillor Amanda Williams. But if I read it out as it's actually written to me then. So it's about policy changes and options for budget reductions from discretionary services, and he's asked what was considered and why they were rejected. And I'll read out the rest of the statement and question. No one doubts that given the significant overspends in both adult and social care, the Social Services Directorate needs financial protection and even enhancement to address the significant challenges in this policy area. But could you outline what options you've considered and rejected for budget savings in the Directorate? Because it was noted that no budget wasn't examined to see if there was any scope for efficiency services. After all, only 7% of budget reductions across the whole local authority are attributed to policy changes. Was there any scope for potentially reducing any of our discretionary services to shore up strategy services, notwithstanding that I know the preventative value of discretionary services in ensuring that people do not eventually have to access statutory support? What I'm trying to say is, what were the options which you considered, or are they few and far between, given the many years of austerity and the significant overspends within your Directorate?
Thank you, Meryl. I think in part we have covered this, but I will come back to both the Cabinet members. I'll go to Councillor Good first, who's on my list first, and then come to you, Deputy, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I also would like to thank Meryl for reading that out, and say what I do really enjoy there is Councillor Williams seems to write in the way that he talks, which I thought was really wonderful. I could hear him. I could hear his presence. I think it's a very good question, and where I felt particularly pressured within this part of the Directorate, which is a little slice of my portfolio, which is obviously very cross-cutting, is the Social Services Directorate as a whole has a lot of challenges and requires funding to continue doing and rebuild from where we are. And I think the work that Claire and the team are doing is really phenomenal. The bit of the Directorate that perhaps gets forgotten a little bit in these discussions is the culture and leisure element of the portfolio, and we were discussing whether we would look at library closures. Obviously, we had a round of library closures. What was it, about 10 years ago, I think, where they moved from local authority control to Arwen and to Halo as partners. And there was potential that we would have to look at some more cuts there, as well as potentially closing 4 Halo venues, all of which would have been north of the M4. And I think we can all agree that for the amount, and actually the amount saved in both cases was very minimal. I'll try and find the exact figures if the chair requires. But so that would constitute about half of what is managed by Halo as a whole, and I think it was saving something like 50,000. And the detriment to our valleys communities and our more remote communities, I think, would have been vast. And I think the thing there as well is, as Claire has alluded to, there are consequences to each decision here across every Directorate, across every cut we're looking to make. There are going to be consequences, and the thing with these consequences is, as Claire noted, in terms of the coordinator roles that exist north of the M4 but not currently south of the M4 in the borough, is when you remove things that seem inconsequential or less important perhaps, like libraries, where actually for a lot of members of our community, that might be the only time they leave their house, speak to someone, and that is the point of contact. And if you've got someone who is well trained and part of that community who can see that person is in trouble, then that's how we make sure they start to get the help they need. So we were looking at that. I think we all decided as a cabinet that as a result, the impact that would have, the sort of unthought of consequence there was too great. And that is, I think, the main element of where we were looking at removing some funding within this directorate. I don't know if the DEP or the officer wants to come back as well.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Williams. So I'm not one to beat around the bush. I was making no reductions in social services when I knew that the pressures on my staff were so significant and so extreme that actually we needed to put additional resource in. Indeed, one of our biggest costs at the minute is our managed team. That is costing us an absolute fortune. But the reality is we would have we would have CIW in here, or we would have Welsh Government in here, and we would be under specific scrutiny and not even running the council ourselves had we continued down the vein we are. One of the reasons that we've put in one of the budget pressures that you see is the assistant head of children's. We've put that in this year because of the significant capacity issues at a managerial level. So that's about the oversight, supervision, it's about strategy, it's about looking at what people are doing and evaluating what's going on. I had no intention of trying to save any money when I knew that so that members are aware, I suppose, particularly of Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee 2, is the fact that my caseloads are rising in my teams. It doesn't matter what team you're talking about, the caseloads are rising. We need to be very careful that they don't rise to a significantly high level, or I'll be introducing more agency staff, because I am not allowing our teams to work at risk, not both to themselves, but also to the families out there in the communities, because that's where our responsibilities lie. So I would always say, I don't care what the cost is. We'll worry about the cost afterwards. We need to manage the difficulties and any complex cases that come through the door first. So I haven't looked to put any additional measures in place. Actually, social services have been cut to the bone over the years. That's one of the reasons we find ourselves in the position that we are today.
Claire, can I bring you in?
Yeah, I would obviously echo everything that the Deputy Leader and the Cabinet Member have said. I think there's been a paradigm shift actually post-pandemic, and the pandemic is not an excuse, but it's a reality that we're living with. Prior to the pandemic, there were significant savings taken out of social services and wellbeing. We talked about the Social Services and Wellbeing Act. Prior to that act, we had a model of practice in adult services particularly, which was deficit based. It was based on what people couldn't do, their disability, and providing lots of support. We've worked tirelessly over the years to work in a strength-based way, to understand what people can do, to promote people to access what's available in their local community and to live really fantastic lives. The pandemic comes in, and we've seen such a massive increase in the emotional health and well-being challenges, and physical health and well-being challenges, actually, the delays in NHS waiting times, people who've delayed getting treatments, the impact on people's physical health if they've not been really outside of their home for pretty much 2 years is massive, and that's what the teams on the adult side are dealing with, and well documented what the teams on the children's side are dealing with. So it felt like a perfect storm, really, that increase in need has happened at the same time as the increase in the cost of provision, the workforce challenges across, be it social work, be it social care workers, has happened. We put forward, because we know the costs of what we deliver. What if we closed all the leisure services? So those are the only things that are available to say this is the cost, but the impact of that cost, obviously the costs coming back to statutory services, we as officers have to advise on that at the same time as we put those sorts of options forward. We will continue obviously to look at the most effective and cost effective way of delivering our responsibilities, but I think as Councillor Good answered earlier, the impact of where we are now, both post-COVID but combined with austerity and cost of living crisis, which every time that's occurred, you've seen a massive increase in the need for statutory services, does mean it feels like a perfect storm at the moment.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate all three of you have given quite a comprehensive answer to the question from Councillor Williams. And I totally understand where you're all coming from as well. You know, yourself, Councillor Good, I've got residents in my own constituency who their properties have been overrun with rats because of rubbish issues, and then we look at taking out of the fly tipping the 200,000 out of the budget there potentially. That would have a massive impact on residents there, which in turn then has an impact further down the line with social services because of the services that become statutory then when the situation gets out of hand, etc. So you're right, it does have a knock-on effect, not just on, you know, health centres and things like that, but across the board. It's every aspect of it. And Councillor Gebby, I completely agree. I have seen personally the amount of changes that have happened within social services because we have been up to that line, we've been up to that precipice because of the cuts that have happened up till now. And I see as well the amount of hard work that Claire Marchant has put in as well as director of this directorate, because it is a difficult one to find that balance and strike that balance. And you're right when you say that actually we put the people first. It's that simple. So I agree with all of you. Thank you.
So just a comment, Chair, and that would be that I hope members still agree with me if we find ourselves in special measures because I've overspent the budget.
It's all right. You can do that one. No, but thank you for that. So if members don't have any further questions, I'm just going to bring Meryl back in.
Thank you, Chair. My mistake. We thought we had eliminated the other questions, but there was one further question that you agreed to be.
I will allow it.
So this one is on workforce, again from Councillor Alex Williams. Given the deficits in core budget to meet the needs of the vulnerable population, addressing the workforce issues within the Social Services Directorate will be crucial. What are you doing to decrease our reliance on costly agency staff and incentivise staff to join as permanent members of the workforce? Thank you, Chair.
Would you like to take this, Deputy? I know we've spoken about this at quite some length, but if you'd like to come back in.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Chair and Councillor Williams. So what are we doing to support staff? I would prefer no agency staff in our workforce at all, any day. That's the first comment I would make. We are in the position where actually even social, so if I give you an example around social workers, Cardiff Met, when they opened their social work degree this year, was half empty of delegates attending. We need Welsh Government to support and deliver on a national care service that not only looks at the strategy of delivering care and support across Wales, but actually it looks at the terms and conditions of all staff. Because until all staff are valued appropriately, we will not be able to resolve the issues that we have around recruitment and retention in health and social care. I note with interest that today Welsh Government came out and they've given a bursary to nurses again. And because they can't get nurses for Live Nil Money. Well, I want them to pay the same attention to our health and social care staff. That I will reiterate again, I do not feel that we value them appropriately. So for me, anybody who is in receipt of care and support at home, I would like the care and support that they receive to be as the same as what my mum would receive at home. International recruitment, we have tables everywhere, we have recruitment drives, we have videos out online on social media, we're in the papers all the time, recruitment, retention, it's an ongoing campaign, as you're aware. We did the 12 days of Christmas about giving care as a present. So I don't know what else we can do at the minute, and we will just keep working as hard as we can.
Thank you. Claire, can I bring you in?
Yeah, and it's the financial and the non-financial, and we have to address both in terms of people's experience of working here with us in Bridgend. I think we've talked about national terms and conditions, and certainly from a professional perspective as ADSS, as well as, you know, politically, we are making that point very clearly. We've done what we can within our gift within Bridgend. We've got teams where market supplements have been applied. We've re-evaluated roles, and all that is really important. On the financial side, some of what we've talked about in terms of the other pressures is really key. You've got to have manageable caseloads. We will not retain staff if caseloads are too high. People have got to be supported to do the work, so those support officer roles, you know, things like contact workers. We've had social workers doing contact. We've got to get all those support elements right so that social workers are doing what only social workers can do. You need excellent management oversight, excellent supervision, appraisals, a really good training offer. We need good marketing. You'll have seen some of the videos that have gone out lately. Keep retweeting them, because if one person comes to us as a consequence of seeing the positive experience people do have when they come to Bridgend, that's really good. Over the short term, we've got the international recruitment, and we hopefully will see some people starting quite soon around that. But over the medium term, we have to grow our own social workers, and I can't emphasise enough how important it is that we keep a steady stream of people that we're seconding ourselves to the social work course, because the course itself is not full and continues to have massive vacancies on it, so we're not going to secure from any other route. All of this means, very sadly, that our reliance on agency workforce is likely to continue for at least the next year, and I'm talking children's social work now. Hence, there'll be a paper coming to Cabinet soon about how we do that in the safest way to impact on quality the least and to give us the best value for money. But it is not optimal, but we have to, when our agency workers here, treat them as one of our own because of the impact on quality. Similar set of actions on the social care workforce, and we again need to give those workers, when they come here, the very best experience, give them the tools to do the job, support them to get their driving licenses if they haven't yet, you know, support them to access electric vehicles if they can't bring their own car into work, and all the wear and tear, let alone what we pay in mileage. So all of those things, it's absolutely our top priority, because we can't deliver on anything else unless we resolve those workforce matters. But sadly, from a budget perspective, I have to advise that certainly from the children's social work perspective, we will be reliant on agency for a while yet, because all those things that we're doing are not going to bring in the sufficiency we need to keep the caseloads as at the level that we need to keep them at.
Thank you, Claire. I can see that we've got Councillor Williams on the call, so I'm just going to ask if Councillor Williams is content with those responses, please.
Hi, Chair. I don't think I'm supposed to contribute to the meeting, but
no, you're not. No. But I just want to know if you're content with those questions being asked and the responses you've had.
Thank you very much for asking the questions. I would have had a follow-up if I could ask them, but I'll reserve that until the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Thanks very much.
I think that would be appropriate. Thank you. So moving on, if we have any other questions from the members within the committee, please raise them now. If not, if there are no further questions, then I'd like to thank our invitees, and you may leave the meeting. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. So moving on to item 4, conclusions and recommendations. Could I ask the scrutiny officer to summarise the key points and the committee to make its conclusions and recommendations, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as anticipated, members had, or the majority of members' questions and answers were around the budgetary pressures within the Social Services and Wellbeing Directorate. And Claire initially was asked about the cost of independent providers, particularly around children's care, and she outlined a number of factors impacting on the cost of those, particularly the complexity in the need of the children and young people, which is going up, and recognising the impact of post-COVID. And one element, or rather the final element that she quoted in relation to that particular area of pressure was workforce, which Chair, you'll note throughout the, did arise several times throughout the meeting. Sorry. Then when we did move on to the pressures, Councillor Amanda Williams asked specifically with regards to the pressure around the learning disabilities service, and received an answer from Mark Wilkinson, who was on the call, around the issues of, or rather the supported living services to support people to live within their own homes. And Claire outlined that you need a sustainable model in terms of resources and finances to be able to support that area. Councillor Amanda Williams did ask about the number of out of county residential placements in particular, and what the authority was doing to bring those down. And Claire provided an answer in terms of the increasing number, and the Deputy Leader gave an indication that those placements, whatever the cost of them, or does have to be most appropriate for those particular children to be able to thrive within them. Sorry, Chair, I'm just checking against my notes. Yes, Councillor Amanda Williams then raised a query with regards to whether the 2% efficiency saving in schools and the possibility of losing the social workers and support staff through compulsory redundancies in that area would have would put an increased demand on social services. And the Deputy gave an indication that there would be no direct impact, I think were her words. The pressures, particularly around adult social care, the £2 million pressure in SSW 11, Councillor Amanda Williams asked whether, I suppose the long and short of the question was, is it going to be sufficient? Claire acknowledged that whatever is invested impacts on, she acknowledged that the pressures essentially impact on all parts of the authority, acknowledging that the education, the Communities Directorate, which have obviously been discussed in detail in other committees. Perhaps most starkly, she did say that the overall, this wouldn't meet the current level of overspend, which members may want to consider with their recommendations. Invitees were also asked essentially how long will the pressures continue within social services. And members sort of indicated how long is it before the directorates can't cut any more in order for those pressures to be funded. And Councillor Gary, the Deputy Leader, said that she looked that it might be around 2 to 3 years before they see any benefit, and highlighted that social services has been taking cuts and hits for 12 years, which wasn't sustainable. And highlighted that that's potentially why social services are in the position that they're in now. Councillor Alex Williams' question was asked on his behalf in returns of what other budget, or whether rather, not others, what if there were any budget reductions considered in social services. And Councillor Good indicated that the Cabinet had looked at potentially the closure of libraries, but overall then had come to the conclusion that actually that was a lifeline for some members of the community. And Councillor Gebby said that she wasn't open to making any reductions in the social services element of the directorate, and highlighted really the statutory duties on the directorate to manage difficult cases as they come through the door, and essentially to fund them as necessary. My final point that I picked out from the meeting was, and I alluded to it at the start of my remarks, was workforce and agency workers and the reliance on agency workers in social services. The deputy gave an example of a bursary having been given out to nurses recently and wanted the same sort of attention for social care staff. And starkly put it that she didn't feel that social care staff were supported sufficiently. And Claire highlighted that it was a balance between the financial element and the non-financial element in terms of working for Bridgend. And it gave various examples of what they've tried to do in terms of the pay element. And in terms of non-financial elements, highlighting a manageable caseload, marketing, and all those things that they've tried to do in terms of recruitment. So whether the committee wanted to make any sort of recommendations or comments about that element. And just sort of overall, really, just whether the committee are satisfied that the budget pressures, well, one of them, obviously, the corporate director has actually indicated is not sufficient in terms of the adult social care, but whether there are any further pressures that the committee don't feel are sufficient and wish to make a recommendation or suggestion about those, or whether some of them go too far or not far enough. So it's just whether the committee have any comments in that respect, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does do any members of the committee wish to speak to this? Would anybody like to make any comment on recommendations about wage increase and the pressures there? Anybody wishing to talk about the suggestions that were made on the further pressures as well? I can see Councillor Lewis has her hand up. Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Chair. I worked in care previous, and I have to agree, wages do need to go up for care workers because it's a very, very difficult job. It's very hard, physically and emotionally. And I do feel that that's one area that does need looking at.
Thank you.
Okay.
Not a problem. Anybody else have an opinion on this? In that case, I'm going to suggest that we recommend that wages are looked at in light of the external pressures from places that were highlighted, such as Aldi putting their wages up, and the other pressures that are on this authority as well, in order to staff appropriately and to move us away from a reliance on agency staff, which I believe is the intention of the Deputy Leader and the Director of the service. But I think in order to help with that, there must be a realignment of the wages. And if the members are in agreement, I would put that forward as a recommendation.
I agree.
Any dissenting voices?
I agree.
Thank you. Any dissenting voices? Then we'll put that forward as a recommendation. Thank you. Just drawing members' attention to the pressures and the sufficiency around that. Are members content with what we've been told today on that, or do members have a view on that at all, please?
I'm content.
You're content, are you, Councillor? Yep. I'm going to bring the scrutiny officer in.
Yeah, Chair, just wanted to check with the committee whether they want to put that forward as a recommendation, or rather a comment to the directorate or COSC on 31st of January in the first instance, that they feel satisfied that the budget pressures set out within the report are sufficient and adequate to support those pressures.
Are there any members that would like to make a comment to that? If not, I'll put that forward as a recommendation as well. Oh, Councillor Watham, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would just ask for some clarity. Is it within the remit of this scrutiny committee to recommend pay rises for employees?
I'll bring the scrutiny officer in on this one.
Thank you, Councillor. I was just going to say, in terms of the recommendation, when we write them up, what I was proposing, and subject to members' agreement, what I was proposing is that actually what it will say is you're inviting the Cabinet, when they consider the final budget and ultimately then full council, to look at the area of wages for social care staff and to consider whether there should be an increase in light of the comments made by the committee, particularly around Aldi and I know the deputy as well in terms of nurses. So we could draft it in those terms.
Is that okay for you?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That clarifies that for myself. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a pertinent question, so thank you very much, Councillor Watham. You're quite right there to ask that. So moving forward, we've got the sufficiency of the budget pressures as a recommendation and the wages issue there. So if members are content, I'll take those forward as the recommendations. Everyone content? No dissenting voices? Lovely, thank you very much. I'll move us along to item 5 now, urgent items. There are no urgent items of business in respect of which notice has been given in accordance with Part 4, Paragraph 4 of the Council Procedure Rules. And so with that in mind, I will close the meeting and thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much, committee.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.